Today we're talking to Yves from R3. R3 is an enterprise blockchain platform that developed Korda. It started as a bank consortium and today is an enterprise software company based in London, but operating also around the world. And we met in Zurich where R3 and F10 announced a partnership. So we'll talk about R3, the Korda, what they can be used for startups. Yves, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about how you got where you are today and what's your role. I understand that you're responsible for venture building in R3. So can you explain a little bit how did you get where you are?
Absolutely. So it's a pleasure to be here. It's always a pleasure coming here to Zurich. And the home of Crypto Valley, you'll have a lot of news and a lot of interesting initiatives when it comes to blockchain. I personally got involved in blockchain about 4 years ago. I originally have more of a policy background and I was interested in international development and how to make finance more inclusive. And I, discovered something called Ethereum at a certain time and all the other blockchain 1.0 technologies. And they gave me a real hope that, if finance is changing, maybe we can make it more sustainable, more inclusive, more streamlined, more efficient. So I got involved building a lot of blockchain projects on a number of blockchain platforms like Ethereum, like Rootstock, which is a smart contract platform on Bitcoin. And eventually I found myself building enterprise blockchain solutions. And that's where I discovered a technology called Korda, built by R3. And Korda's unique approach to blockchain specifically inspired me to, join the company in London and focus on capital markets infrastructure projects, digital assets, insurance projects in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa.
All right. So what is R3 today?
So R3 is an enterprise blockchain software company. And initially, the story of R3, a lot of people wonder how this blockchain came to be as a unique new platform. And the way it started was it was a research initiative among a consortium of some of the world's largest financial institutions. And this research initiative really was focused on the question of, can we find a way to learn from the lessons of Bitcoin and Ethereum and the promises that they show, but also the challenges that they kind of express when people are trying to apply them to business today. And over the course of 3 years, after taking a lot of input from some of our member banks, it occurred to us, generally speaking, that this could actually be an enterprise software proposition. So what was initially a membership model, really, for the research initiative, turned into an investment approach into this software company that we are today. And I'm happy to say that we're fast expanding. And the lessons learned from all this engagement with tried and tested financial institutions kind of led us to put forward a very smart approach to using blockchain in finance and generally business today.
All right. Of course, a lot of people or members of the public, they know about the cryptocurrencies, things like that. Less people know about enterprise blockchain solutions, but there are some very powerful competitors of yours. So what is your unique advantage and why do you think R3 and Korda, let's talk about Korda as well, is different or a better position to address problems in that space?
Absolutely. I wouldn't look at it from a competitive standpoint. Yes, we have a winner-take-all lens when we look at all technology today, right? The unicorn effect. But I think after building several projects in different verticals, I'm realizing that blockchains essentially are tools for certain problems. And certain blockchains will be excellent to solve some problems and terrible at solving others.
Right.
And the unique advantage that Korda has is that we're built with business in mind. And the second runner-up sort of position that Korda came into allowed us to design a blockchain 3.0 approach to using DLT in business. What this means is that some of the issues that people might face using technologies like Ethereum or some of the more broadcasting technologies, I would call them, like the privacy, like security, like regulatory compliance, these are things that we actually took into product design decisions with the help of regulators around the planet, with the help of companies who actually want this to succeed as part of our design process. And in terms of the wave of products that we're seeing now coming into production on blockchain live today, I think that design decision to learn from the mistakes of blockchain 1.0 is really paying off.
And can you explain also a little bit about the basics and what is Korda? So starting from, this is not a public blockchain, talk about scalability, the privacy, security, things like that.
Excellent. So Korda as a blockchain it's a point-to-point, need-to-know blockchain. It enables people to build tailored networks that don't necessarily broadcast the inputs or outputs of each transaction. And it essentially allows people to build interconnected network of applications based on known identified parties that are able to use and take advantage of smart contracts. Now, this has strong implications if you're looking to, say, build derivatives trading applications, but don't want to broadcast the content of your trade like some of the other blockchain platforms would do. Another thing that is really essential here is that if you and I have a swap transaction that we want to do on Korda, we will not broadcast this to the rest of the planet in order to prove that it's true, because the cryptography of you and I will actually demonstrate this. But we can loop in a regulator who is also aware that not only are we not breaching regulatory compliance rules, but we're also able to loop them into every single transaction, but only them, because that's what we choose to do. So this tailor-made approach to privacy in network building and the transfer of value is what a lot of people find attractive in terms of building financial or insurance or trade solutions with Korda as a blockchain.
I guess that's also partly an answer to scalability issues.
Absolutely. I mean, the Depository Trust Corporation and Accenture in the US did an excellent, robust test of Korda as a blockchain, and we reached 27,000 transactions per second. They were able to simulate the entire US equities market on the Korda blockchain successfully over the course of a day, generally speaking. So with that kind of proof that you have, startups find that there's a lot of confidence then that when they speak to regulated financial institutions, that they're not going to provide a piece of software that is flimsy. This is robust enterprise stuff, and we're happy to be providing it to more and more companies.
And who are your target customers or your key customers? You alluded to the beginnings of R3, that it's been a banking consortium. So do you only tailor your solutions to the banking sector, or is this also potentially usable for the industry?
Absolutely. So I'll answer this in terms of the verticals that we're seeing and the types of companies that we're seeing in our ecosystem. And yes, there is this view that, of course, if you start as a consortium of financial institutions exploring how to apply smart contracts to your industry, you'll be perceived as a bankers-only blockchain. But that's no longer the case. We've been surprised that insurance actually is our largest, most successful vertical compared to financial services to start with. But more than that, we're seeing people using blockchain in the Korda blockchain in supply chain projects, in trade finance projects, in telecoms projects increasingly. And we have other verticals in shipping, medical services or health services, and some others that I won't bother to mention today because they're just growing in their diversity. Okay. In terms of the type of companies that we're looking at, it's ISVs, it's system integrators, it's tech companies who, generally speaking, want to offer new types of products to their end users. And sometimes these tech companies are offshoots of major banks, major financial institutions as well.
So if you go back to the banks and you talked about capital markets, FinTech is a particular niche, obviously critical to banks, not so publicized sometimes. So can you give us some examples of how Korda works in that space?
So we have a technology called IVNO, for example, which is going in production at the moment, and it's tokenized collateral as part of financial services transactions. We have companies like Agora who are doing bond issuance using Korda, for example. We have successful consortiums of banks like in Marco Polo who are doing trade finance, essentially receivables financing on a consortium basis. And Voltron, which is essentially a technology to do along the same lines, trade finance solutions linked to, like, you may have seen the HSBC announcement. In addition to that, we have things like InsureWave in insurance, which is a live solution today that is revolutionizing marine cargo insurance. So there are a lot of use cases like that. And frankly, we've stopped dictating how people choose to use Korda as a blockchain as long as we help as a technology provider.
I see. All right. And so where are you on your journey in terms of geographic reach? You mentioned the verticals, etc.
So it's interesting because when my partners ask me, where do you work? I say I work for a startup. And it's just kind of interesting because as a startup, we have 250 plus people around the world. We've just announced a doubling of our engineering centers from away from London, but also expanding from London to Dublin. We're in New York, we're in Hong Kong, we're in Sao Paulo in Brazil. We're also in Singapore, very active in Singapore, actually. And there's those rumors, I'm going to talk about a rumor in public here, but we really want to expand our presence in the DACH region specifically. So this is Switzerland and Germany as well. So we're expanding globally and rapidly at the moment, and we're happy that Switzerland is part of this story as well.
Okay. So I heard that you announced cooperation with F10, so what does that entail?
Right. We are busy being an enterprise software company, and that means that we can't necessarily be an incubator. We can't remain a lab forever, right? And F10 is such a tremendous tool for us because we don't have a technology unless it's adopted, unless startups feel motivated to use this technology that is open source today to provide value to their customers and their segments. So F10 has been a successful experiment in developing companies that use blockchain technology, Korda blockchain, to revolutionize the way tokenization is done, revolutionize the way bond issuance is done, revolutionize the way people lend, syndicated lending happens in banking today. And F10 just has the eye in terms of mentorship for these startups, the hand-holding that's required initially, and then the exposure to the key players they need in their growth journey. We're happy about this partnership.
What is the long-term vision for R3? You talked about expansion to DACH, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, but overall, what is the end game for you? Where you would say, now we've made it, we're no longer startup or scale up, we are as big as, you name it, big software companies. What is the ultimate target here?
I think right now the key focus, we can talk about the end game. I think the next step really in terms of R3 is having as many solutions using enterprise blockchain on Korda in production successfully. We're developing, supporting success stories around the world as much as we can. And I think the key thing will be to dramatically increase our amount of startup support to grow our ecosystem, developing tried and tested production solutions using blockchain to prove these use cases for people at banks who might be advocating for blockchain technology internally and maybe learning from the lessons of the first wave of blockchain with Bitcoin. And generally speaking, proving that blockchain actually adds value as a company and building a business out of that is robust and enterprise grade.
Great. So, Yves, where can interested parties reach you, and what kind of people would be the most interesting for you to partner up with?
Absolutely. So I'm here at F10. I'm at Yves Messi on Twitter, and generally speaking, r3.com is where you can find the most information today on how to get involved.
Wonderful. Good luck to our